Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are digging into the five, maybe surprising truths behind those new weight loss drugs that, let's be honest, are changing everything.
I mean, you can't escape them. These medications are a total global phenomenon. They're shaking up public health, the stock market, you name it. But what's the real story behind all the headlines and the hype? What's hiding in plain sight? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Okay, so for decades, right, the story about weight loss was always about willpower. Just try harder. But our first truth today shows a huge shift in that thinking. It's moving the whole conversation away from, feeling like a personal failure and towards seeing it for what it is, a real public health issue. And just look at this data from the Pew Research Center. It's pretty striking. Nearly two-thirds of Americans now say, nope, willpower by itself just isn't going to cut it for most people. That's a massive change in how we as a society are thinking about the complexities of obesity. And it gets even more interesting when you break it down by gender. Look at that gap. A full 71% of women agree that willpower isn't the whole picture, but only 59% of men do. It really suggests that women might be feeling the pressure and the limitations of that just try harder approach way more intensely. So this change in thinking didn't just change minds, okay? It created a massive market. And that brings us to our second truth, the absolutely insane multi-billion-dollar gold rush that's happening right now. Seriously, the numbers we're about to see are kind of hard to wrap your head around. Get this. In 2024 alone, just one company, Novo Nordisk, pulled in over $31 billion from its family of GLP-1 drugs. You know, the ones that work by mimicking a hormone to help control appetite. To give you some perspective on that, that's more money than Starbucks or Netflix make in a whole year, just from these drugs. And they're not the only ones, not by a long shot. Their biggest competitor, Eli Lilly, brought in over $16 billion from its own drugs. So add it all up, between just two companies, you're looking at almost $50 billion in revenue in one single year. Wow. But here's the thing, it's not just the huge numbers, it's the speed. Look at this chart. Novo Nordisk sales almost tripled in just 2 years. That's the kind of growth that market analysts are calling totally unprecedented in the pharma world. It's like a rocket ship. Okay, with all this money flying around and all the hype, it's easy to think these drugs are just some kind of quick cosmetic fix. But that leads us straight to truth number 3. They are absolutely not for everyone. These are powerful, serious medications, and they're meant for very specific medical situations. So, who's actually supposed to get a prescription for these? Well, doctors follow really strict guidelines. It's all based on something called body mass index, or BMI, which is basically a measure of body fat. Generally, you need a BMI of 30 or higher, or a BMI of at least 27 if you also have a related health problem like high blood pressure. The bottom line here is, these were never designed for someone who just wants to drop a few pounds before a vacation. So you've got this massive demand, right? But you've also got high costs and even shortages. And that combination has created a really dangerous situation. Our fourth truth is all about the rise of this risky, kind of Wild West black market, and it's putting people in serious danger. The FDA is sounding the alarm on this, issuing urgent warnings about these unapproved products. They're especially worried about something called compounded versions. That's where some pharmacies try to mix their own batches to get around shortages. The FDA has found fake products, drugs made with unapproved chemicals, and stuff that was stored or shipped the wrong way, making it useless or even dangerous. And here's the scariest part. They're getting reports of major dosing errors from these unregulated sources that have actually put people in the hospital. And listen, these risks aren't just theoretical. They are very, very real. This quote right here is straight from the FDA, describing what happened to someone who used a fraudulent product. The simple truth is, when you step outside that official supply chain, you have absolutely no idea what you are actually injecting into your body. And that brings us to our final truth. And honestly, this might be the most important and most overlooked one of all. It's about the long-term reality of these drugs. So what happens when you stop taking them? Well, the guidance from the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases is pretty clear. The evidence is overwhelming. For most people, when you stop the medication, the weight starts to come back. And this single fact is totally reframing how we look at obesity. It's not something you can just cure in a few months. It's being treated more and more like a chronic disease, one that might need lifelong management, kind of like high blood pressure or diabetes. So that leaves us with a really big question for the future, doesn't it? If obesity is a chronic disease and these drugs just manage it, does that mean the future is a lifelong prescription for millions and millions of people? When you think about it, from the cultural shift away from willpower to this massive new market with a dangerous shadow economy, these drugs are way more than just a medical breakthrough. They're a societal one. And that question, the one about long-term use, that's something that doctors, patients, and really all of us are going to be wrestling with for a long, long time.